Well, we don't need it. Alhamdulillah. Being tall has its benefits. I take the whole name now. You have the remote? Okay. Alhamdulillah. جزاك الله خير. طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Did we complete this last time? Do you guys remember? When is backbiting allowed?
Yeah.
We did? Okay. So I'll just go through it very quickly. Revealing injustice, assisting and repelling evil and turning the oppressor to good, seeking fatwa, warning Muslims of evil. He's known by name, pointing out his shortcomings and pointing out someone proud of his sin. So let's think of an example for each of these, and then we'll continue on to the next chapter, inshallah. So you need an internet connection first.
Oh, really?
It's not connected.
Oh.
I mean, it might be a Wi-Fi problem. I mean, let's see what happens. Revealing injustice. What would be a good example of this? Why would I need to backbite in this situation? Yes.
Reporting somebody who broke the law.
Okay. So we had spoken about this before. Reporting others, is that part of the ethos of Islam? If I see somebody running a red light, that I call the police and let them know, or I take a picture? No, right? So that it's not that so much. Right? So we're talking about here. There's a difference between breaking the law and injustice, right? Breaking the law, the person could be harming themselves, but injustice is actually what, right? It's happening to someone else. It's happening to someone else. So. And it's not going to be considered backbiting in that situation. Why? Because you're trying to bring justice to the situation. You're trying to remove harm from that person. They're assisting and repelling evil and turning the oppressor toward good. So if one person is oppressing another, what would I do? Or how would backbiting help in this situation? Because there has to be a maslahah. There's no way that backbiting would be allowed unless there's a clear reasoning to allow it and to promote it.
Relieving the harm that the oppressor is doing.
Right. The idea, again, even in the first situation and the second situation, the idea is to remove the harm. Right. The idea is to remove the harm in those particular scenarios. What did I do here? Okay. The third one, seeking fatwa.
When you're seeking fatwa, you have to and you can and you should reveal some of private information, something that you may not do normally. But in this case, it is allowed.
Yeah. So like indulging information about someone, saying that so-and-so committed such and such sin. I was there. You know what I mean? Like, and I was there. I don't know if I reacted the right way. And this is usually the purpose of the fatwa. Warning Muslims of evil. Like what?
You may know something personally about a person. Say, for instance, if someone came to marry a dude.
That's a perfect example, right? So when it comes to issues of marriage, so what can you do? So if someone comes to me and they say, hey, what do you think about Muhammad?
If you know something factual,
it's like, it might not be a good, like, or I can, if I leave things vague, is that usually helpful? And does that deter people from getting married? Right. It's usually not helpful. It's like, I don't think it's a good idea. And then they get married and like, why didn't you tell me like he had an alcohol problem? And it's like, well, I said it wasn't a good idea, right? But sometimes it's important to be specific. Otherwise, it's not enough to deter them from the actual marriage, because they're like, oh, okay, well, if he's not telling me the problem, that means what? It's not it's not something that's significant. It's just not his personal preference or his personal choice. Known by name, pointing out his shortcomings. This is, so like if you just call somebody, like somebody's known because they were smaller than the rest of the group, they're just known as shorty. So they're like, hey, did you call Shorty? Did you pick him up? Did you, you know what I mean? And it's not something that, it's not a praiseworthy characteristic, but he just became to be known by that. In this time, many times this even happens when a person outgrows the size. So, you know, he might even end up being the biggest person in the group, but that name just kind of stuck with him and it stayed with him. Pointing out someone proud of his sins. Why? Because this is somebody who's doing something publicly. So at that point, it's not really backbiting. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Can we consider people posting things through their social media as people proud of their sins?
Yes, because it's public, right? At that point, when somebody's putting, and someone, one of the only situation where I would make an exception is if somebody is known to have a certain characteristics. Like, so for example, if a woman is known to wear her hijab, right? And then there are pictures on her social media without the hijab. I'd be willing to make an excuse that that person, their profile is what? It's probably private and it's shared with select people. Is it a good idea? No, obviously not. You know, but there's a difference between making poor decisions and somebody openly sinning. You guys, are you with me? So I can make a poor decision and posting in a place where I shouldn't. It's like, okay, yeah, it is private, but it doesn't mean, what if somebody's sitting with his wife and she's going through her pictures and your picture comes up? You know what I mean? Like, so it's a poor decision on that person's part, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is proud of that situation, because we know this, you know, this woman to usually be covered and to wear hijab. So it really depends. It can be contextual. So the social media thing, but if I have somebody who has a private account and you see him like every picture he's like drinking alcohol, it's still public. You know, it's still public, even though that information or that picture is only shared with their friends, because that is clear sinning. And what excuse can I come up with at that point?
I mean, because I don't think there's a difference. The person is sinning and he shares that with two people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And 200.
Yeah.
If
He's open about it.
Like,
Yeah.
for instance, when they talk about spying on your neighbor.
Yeah, yeah.
If your neighbor is doing something in seclusion of his house,
Sure.
you're not invited.
Yeah.
And that's his business.
Absolutely.
If you peep through the hole, you get your eye poked out.
Yeah.
Then, you know, that's your problem. You know, you shouldn't have been peeking through the hole.
No, so, and not just that. What can the neighbor now say about you? That you're spying, right? That this person is peeping on me, or this person is spying on me. So it's a very delicate balance with a lot of these things. But with the social media, if it's an open sin, like I said, if I cannot come up with an excuse for that person. So for example, you'd be like, okay, well, all of these settings, he's out with his friends and he doesn't have any alcohol in front of him, right? You know what I mean? Like that's something that I can definitely come up with an excuse for, but it's not, I have to make sure that it is something that's reasonable. You know, it's like, oh, you know, oh, well, you know, he has alcohol in front of him. It's like, no, he was just rinsing his mouth out. He didn't intend to drink it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, now you're kind of stretching it and you're kind of pushing, you know, the boundaries of logical reality, or, you know, rational reasons for that to happen.
So it's not backbiting.
No, it wouldn't be backbiting. Well, again, because any person who puts it, like, they're putting information out there. It's very different than them not sharing the information or having a photo album at home, you know, and then I come across that album and I'm like, you know, what is this? You know, and it's very important for us to keep in mind that social media is a public platform. So even people, even having WhatsApp messages, for example, even though it's a private conversation that I'm having with someone, essentially, as soon as I put the information out there, it is private. And if I want to keep my information private, what is the best thing to do? Just don't tell anyone. Like, like that's the best way to do it. Like, just don't tell anyone, or tell people who are legally privileged to that information. So who are people who I could probably share this information with? Huh? Well, a husband and wife, a lawyer, right? A lawyer, a doctor, all right, a therapist, right? Or even an imam, right? So these people, they're actually legally bound to not share the information that comes across them or comes to them. Even between a husband and a wife, you know, what are the levels of secrecy that could apply or should apply? It depends on the couple, right? I won't say that there's no hard, fast rule on how they're supposed to deal with each other. I remember there's a couple that had said, and they came down and they were coming for counseling or whatever. And I was just kind of listening to them, and they're like, yeah, we don't really know a lot about each other's past. And I was like, why? They're like, well, we just never really asked. I was like, oh, okay. You know, so again, why? Because it wasn't important to that couple. And I asked them, well, why do you think it was important? They're like, well, we're always busy talking about the future. Like, so we never really cared about what happened in the past, and we were worried about building from this point forward. So it wasn't important to that couple. Does it mean that it's not important to every couple? No, like there are some couples who like intimately need to know, like, you know, what you did, like, you know, when you were 8 years old, you know, and you went on this, what did you eat when you went on that trip? Like, you know, I mean, and to each their own. I'm not here to judge to say, you know, what amount of information is important, what amount of information is not important. It's whatever is going to help build that relationship. Also, the information needs to be relevant, right? So this is not an open license to backbite. Just because somebody's an open center, you're like, finally, yeah, that dude's really ugly. You know what I mean? Like, it's not relevant to what he's doing, you know? So if he has a problem where he's like, you know, he does drugs or whatever the case might be, it's not an open license to be like, yeah, like, I've been waiting to say he's stupid. Like, you know, it's not an open license for that, but just to talk about the things that are relevant. Why? Because what is the ultimate goal of doing this type of backbiting? What is the purpose behind it? There's a maslaha, right? There has to be a potential good that is coming out of it. So what are some potential goods that are coming out of these scenarios or these situations? Right? You want to try to stop the evil or minimize it or reverse it, or hopefully, you know, bring that person back to good, you know, and bring some amends. And this is sometimes one of the ways that we fail, and that we'll talk about people. And one of the biggest cloaks that we had discussed when we're talking about others is we'll put a religious gown. We'll be like, oh, you know, the poor guy or miskeen. And then we'll just kind of open, you know, that'll be the gateway. And then it'll be the means to open the door to talk about the person, even though essentially it's backbiting, and it's not the permissible type of backbiting, right? It's actually the impermissible type. There are different applications that we had talked about. Marriage was the one that you had mentioned, very, and it is very important. It's very specific. There are a number of marriages. It's less of an issue that I've dealt with here in the States, like age. Like people just blatantly lie about their age. I don't know why. Like this, it's like an Eastern phenomenon where people will go and they'll just like blatantly lie about their age when they go to get married, and then somebody will ask me like, yeah, you know, he's saying that he's 28. It's like, no, dude, that dude's like 45, you know. Like, and like I don't know what it is or why it is, but it's a thing. So in that situation, it's okay to expose the person for lying in that situation. When people seek references, and in those situations, why? Because you're talking about sometimes legal ramifications that come into play. And if I'm a character witness for someone, or if I'm there to talk about someone, I cannot hide information about that person, or it's not my job to protect him. It's my job to present the information as is. Businesses, one of the things about businesses is that when it comes to hiring or firing, there is an issue of sometimes people are accused of certain things, but it's not necessary that they actually are that thing, right? So it's not necessary that that person is a thief or a sinner or whatever. But if I have two applicants that come to me and one of them is accused of being a thief and the other one isn't, and otherwise they're equal, me as a business owner, what should I do?
When you have two choices, you pick the easier, or it would indicate the better of the choices. You would, of course, probably take the person who's not accused of the theft.
Absolutely. So, and by doing that, am I discriminating? Am I being prejudiced? No. Why? Because even this person is accused. Did I say he was a thief? No. I'm just saying the possibility there, just because he's accused, is higher. And I should definitely take that into account in my hiring practices. And one of the important things that we should benefit and we should learn from this is how important our character is and our community reputation is. This is sometimes, you know, we overlook this. I don't care what people have to say. I don't care. Well, you should. And I'm not saying it should be the driving force in our lives, right? Definitely not. But we should definitely pay attention to what other people are saying, because it is through reputation that we are able to build our networks. It is through reputation that we're able to build our business contracts. It is through reputation that we're able to build our friendships, right? You know, that reputation is something that is very valuable and is something that we should always work to protect. And again, it shouldn't be the driving force in our lives. The driving force in our lives are Allah and His Messenger. There's no doubt about that. But along with that, we should try to make sure that we're doing our best to protect our reputations.
And even with the reference, I know that we have to be careful ourselves that we are not pulled into lying.
Absolutely.
Misleading,
yeah.
Because sometimes I have people come to me, I'm in a position to do a lot of reference for a lot of different stuff.
Sure.
And the person comes and says, can you do a reference? I say, and if I know I have some issues, I tell the person, maybe you don't want me to do your
I might not be the best person.
I tell them up front, you don't want me to do your reference, or no, I can't do your reference. And I tell them because.
Yeah. I actually had a really good friend. He was applying I think to a doctoral program, and he's like, hey, can I put you as a reference? And I was like, you can put me as a personal reference, but you can't put me as a business reference. I was like, we haven't done any business together. And he was like I could tell he was really upset, when I told him that. But I was like, hey, I'm sorry. I've never worked for you. You've never worked for me. We've never gone into business together in anything. I can't be a business reference for you. I have no qualms in being a personal reference, but that's the most I can do for you. So we have to make sure we're honest with that. Yes.
I was going to ask, in terms of like someone who has a reference and in terms of one who's accused and one who isn't,
Yeah.
would it be considered backbiting for him to go look into the accusation or not?
I mean, he's more than welcome to, because the thing is, at that point, criminal records, this is public information. You know what I mean? Like, there are certain things that become public information, and even criminal records, why is that information become public? Someone might be like, oh, well, what if this person made Toba and et cetera, et cetera? Like, why? Why is it okay for me to go look into somebody's criminal record?
And the live possibility of happening that again.
Okay, so there's a possibility of that. But he made Toba. You're not even giving people a chance.
You're giving a chance, but you're taking that probability again into account.
Okay, because somebody has fallen into it once, the likelihood of them falling into it again is definitely possible. Like, what else? Why is it okay for me to seek that person's criminal record or search it?
Because depending on what the crime is or what the accusation is, could affect whatever they're being hired or.
Sure. So, like, if we're looking for a youth director and this person has a history of pedophilia. No, this is a problem. Like, this person is a sex offender. Does it make sense to put him into a position where he has access to children? No, absolutely not. And someone might come to me and might be like, oh, well, he's made Toba, look, he's mashallah, he prays in the first row, like every salah, he's like always with his, sibha, and like he's reading Quran. And that's exactly what it is. That's whatever his Toba is, that's between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that mean that there aren't consequences in this world for the actions that he's taken in the past? No, right? There are always going to be consequences, and we have to make sure that we are cognizant of that. And because somebody has been tested by something once, the likelihood of him being tested by it again are higher. This person has been accused of stealing from the treasury, or he's been accused of stealing from the money from particular organizations. Does it make sense to give him access to the money? No. It's silly, right? It's silly and it's naive on our part to put people back into positions where they have been tested with once before. We should even change their fields. I mean, I've heard this happens with some imams as well, right? So what happens is that there is a violation by the imam. He's violated his duties by either marrying someone from the congregation or whatever the case might be, and we'll talk about why I find that problematic. But then he loses a job. People get upset, like, oh, what is he going to do? What is he going to do? Exactly, right. He should have thought about that before he did it. And the other reason I mentioned that is because as an imam, you have a position of authority in the community, and as soon as you are put in a position of authority, this now makes everybody who is subordinate vulnerable. Very, very simply. And if there is anything like with the power dynamic, and I think the Americans have actually done this very well, especially in the workplace. The rules and regulations that they have for intimacy and being a couple, et cetera, whatever that might be, or even in school settings, I think they're very much in line with Islamic ethos. Not to say that, all right, is it permissible for a teacher to marry his student? Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say it's haram, or just like it's permissible for an imam to marry one of the congregation. It's not haram, but what the problem there is because of the power dynamic. And the way I like putting it to people is that if that same person, if that same teacher, if that same imam, if that same whoever it is, if he requested this person to make zina with him, that person would probably agree. Why? Because of the power dynamic, and it's just that authority is something that is very powerful. Sometimes it's very intoxicating, and it can be very confusing to a lot of people. This is why it's a problem not only for many imams, but it's also a problem for many congregants. But in general, there are three populations that I think are like particularly susceptible. Those who, like a counselor and the person who they're counseling, the teacher and the student, I think also, and new Muslims, like very, very vulnerable populations. They're very naive. Like they just don't, like they just don't know a lot. And you'll find within 6 months of them coming to Islam, they've already been married off to someone. And a lot of times I will see that they've been married to someone who's extremely narcissistic, extremely controlling, like, and it's just problematic all across the board. And you ask her, why is she okay with it? Well, I have to obey my husband. It's like, okay, but that's not how obedience, obedience isn't complete submission to everything that he's requesting and everything that he's demanding. Like, yes, you're supposed to listen to him, you're supposed to respect him, you're supposed to honor him, but that complete and total submission, this is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think there should be a moratorium on like new Muslims getting married. Like they have to be Muslim at least like a year before they're even able to accept proposals. So these are some A'raj and Amish, very famous scholars, and they were known for that. They were known for these like these nicknames, but they never really had a problem with it. Also, pointing out someone who is proud of their sins. These are things that people do many times openly, and they don't really care, and they'll boast about it. So talking about those things, again, is not problematic. So the next discussion is expiation for backbiting. How do I actually seek Tawbah if I backbit someone or if I spoke about someone? So toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he must show remorse, right? And nadam is something that is extremely important. Even Ibn Mas'ud, he summarizes Tawbah with remorse. He said just that feeling is the essence of what Tawbah is. And repent, asking and seeking from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Toward the one who he backbit, there's a couple things he needs to do. He needs to seek that person's pardon. And if there is no regret, then all he has managed to do is commit an additional sin. Why? Let's think about that. So if the person doesn't have any remorse, and then he goes and he seeks pardon from someone, Ghazāli says he has actually committed 2 sins now. Why? So what is the problem with being disingenuous? It can be, it's one of the signs of nifaq, which is what? Why is he doing it then? For show. Ahsant. So he's fallen not only into ghiba, but he's also fallen into riya. Here are a few narrations. It is enough to seek repentance without the need for seeking pardon. We'll talk about this. Abdullah ibn Mubarak said, if a man backbites another, then do not tell him, but seek repentance on his behalf. Mujahid, rahimahullah, he said, the penance for eating the flesh of your brother is to praise him and supplicate for him. Atā ibn Abi Rabah was asked about slandering another, and he said, go to your brother and say, I lied in what I said, I was oppressive, I acted poorly. If you will, you may take your rights, and if you will, you may forgive. So what is something that stands out here? So these can definitely, they can be different situations for sure. What else? What is something that stands out for you guys? Okay, so the remorse is something that's definitely fundamental. I agree with that 100%. What else stands out for you guys?
Opposing opinions here.
Okay, what are the 2 opinions? What are you seeing?
One is seeking tawbah to Allah.
So I think all of them agree on this, right? Correct? So everybody, all of the scholars, they agree on seeking tawbah. What is it that they're differing on? So actually approaching the person. And it seems like there are two things that are happening here. You have some scholars who say that approaching and seeking pardon is what? Right, it's not necessary. And then you have some who say that it is. It's fundamental for the tawbah to actually be accepted. So here, this is the one that actually Ghazāli chooses. He says that seeking pardon is a fundamental part of seeking tawbah. It is not enough to not seek tawbah. You have to do that anyway. But in addition to that, you do have to seek pardon. Yes?
Well, you're gonna cover this.
In what situations should, or what situations? Yeah.
There are certain cases when you should not, if you fear that will ruin your relationship.
Okay. We'll talk about that, inshallah. So over here, it is said there's no replacement for honor versus wealth. Therefore, one is not obliged to seek pardon. Meaning that if I take someone's money, I am obligated to what? To give it back. But if I take someone's honor, how do I practically return that? right? It's not something that can be restored. So they're saying because it's not something it's not rationally possible to return it just like you would money, then it's not necessary to seek pardon for that. And again, there are arguments for and against this. So Ghazāli, he says this is a weak argument. he's not a big fan. He says why? Because there's actually a punishment for slander. There's a punishment for slander. And he mentions a hadith. He says, whoever has oppressed another person concerning his reputation or related to it, he should beg him to forgive him before the day of resurrection, when there will be no money to compensate for the wrong deed. But if he has good deeds, those good deeds will be taken from him according to his oppression which he has done. And if he has no good deeds, the sin of the oppressed person will be loaded on him. And this hadith is in Bukhari. So how can the scholars say that you don't seek pardon when you have a hadith like this? They're all saying you seek tawbah, but the ones who are saying that you don't need to seek pardon, on what basis? How can they make that claim? Why is that okay? Mm-hmm. There's absolutely right. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he forgives everything. Inna Allah la yaghfiru an yushraka bihi wa yaghfiru ma duna dhalika liman yasha. Right? You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he forgives everything except making shirk with him. So you do have supporting proofs that definitely tie into that and talk about that. And not just that, can Allah's forgiveness be can I put a condition on Allah's forgiveness? Right? That it doesn't. I have no power to hold Allah hostage. Right? I realistically don't have that power. I don't have that ability. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he does mata yasha, whatever he wants, whenever he wants, however he wants. Kayfa yasha. So the argument is strong that pardoning is not a crucial part of it. But is it, based on this, is it not a complete way of dealing with the situation and dealing with the backbiting? And it can be a situation. Yeah. It would be, yeah.
But we know the rahmah of Allah extends beyond,
for sure,
even that, because even people who have no deeds, good deeds, can get the rahmah.
Absolutely.
So in the end, we know, like you say, the person who uses that, we know that the rahmah would be the ultimate, but who wants to wait?
No, not just that. Who wants to take the chance?
Yeah, who wants to,
You know what I mean? Like anything that we do in life, we try to stack the odds in our favor. So why is it when we deal with the akhirah, we don't really care about stacking the odds in our favor? It's more like, no, Allah will forgive. It's like, not necessarily, right? It's still time. Yeah. Yeah.
Do I want to be one of the last people
yes.
to come out of the fire?
Absolutely. Yeah, Allah protect us. So Ghazāli, he says that it is a must, right? It is a conditional part of repentance that an individual must seek pardon, and he must seek repentance. So if the backbitten is absent or dead, then he should seek forgiveness and supplicate for him, in addition to doing more good deeds. And this is something that he closes with, but he says, so seeking pardon obligation? He says no. Why? Because this pardon is it's extra. It's a gift. He doesn't make it fundamental to the complete tawbah, but he makes it an important part of it. And he says it is something that should be sought after for sure, because it is possible that he's able to win the backbitten's heart over, or even if he doesn't, he can counter the evil that was backbiting for him on the day of judgment. Like, can it be conditional? So if we know that it's not a condition, are there situations where it's better for me not to tell the person?
Yeah, even as
the
brother mentioned that.
Yeah,
it can cause a bigger fitna than the actual backbiting. If you did some small backbiting in the eyes of whatever.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And you went to this person and told him this person may be have this certain type of personality. Yeah. That they want to make it a bigger issue.
Yeah, I mean, some people are petty, right? Like, some people are very petty. And if I go to that person and I tell them like, hey man, yeah, sorry, I was making fun of your shorts, they will never, like, they will never let go of it. And that's something that I always hold against me. And every time I meet them, it's like, oh, you don't like my shorts, huh? Like, and every time I meet them, they're going to remind me of that. Does that help that relationship? No, it doesn't help him, right? Because now he has something in his heart against you, and it doesn't help me because I have to keep hearing it. And it's just going to cause, I just managed to increase the malice that was between us. So it definitely is conditional. And again, this is in general, right? In general, it is better to seek pardon. It is better to, to do whatever we can. And like you said, when when that person is absent or dead. Yes.
Oh, I missed part of the discussion, but I was just gonna ask, like, I don't know if you already covered it, but so please forgive me. If people are going for Hajj or Umrah and they always come around, they ask each other to forgive.
Sure.
Is that something that you discussed earlier?
No.
Do you need to?
I mean, it's always good to, right? It's always good to. Why should we ask for forgiveness before we make Hajj? And why would it be, or why is this something that has become a cultural phenomenon? Why is it so common? What do you guys think? That people go around asking for forgiveness before they make Hajj?
That people just tongues are so loose. They backbite and slander without any thought. So they don't even remember. People
I love
do
stuff.
stuff and don't remember.
Yeah.
In this society.
Yeah, sure.
Also like validation thing.
Like
Are so intent on seeking validation of other people.
it could be, right? There could be social reasons. I think there are more logistic reasons. Yeah, go ahead.
People are cognizant of this effect, so they feel like their Hajj wouldn't be complete if they didn't kind of clear out everything out of the way.
Yeah, like clear their books before they head out. Another reason is that Hajj has only become easy in the modern era, right? Like, you know, it's like people died. Like it was like a normal thing for like someone. Why would people ask for forgiveness? Because they're like, well, there's a chance I might not make it back. You know, this might be my final trip, or this might be my final journey. Hajj would take sometimes months. It wasn't, you know, like, you know, so you had people traversing land. If you wanted to get there quicker, you know, what was the quickest way to get to Mecca before? Not by land, but by sea, right? You know, going across the water is the quickest way to get there. The sea is not exactly like a super safe place. Right? You know, but boats would capsize, you know, there'd be storms, they have all kinds of problems. And like if you're on the water for like a month and you don't have a hull designed, you know what I mean, like they do today, where it can like deal with like capsizing, it can deal with like storms, stuff like that. I mean, these are things they're just made out of wood. They would take animal fat, you know what I mean, and rub it on the on the wood to make sure the barnacles didn't get on it and weigh the boat down. It was a different era, you know. In the era we live in now, Hajj is not, you know, it's not really that big a deal. It's like, yeah, you know, I'm gonna make Hajj this year, and you know, just and I think that thing has just kind of been tradition, like passed down now, where people do seek that forgiveness. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't see a problem with it, especially since you're getting an opportunity to make Hajj. You know, not everybody gets that opportunity. Like, so Sa'id ibn Musayyib said, I will not pardon the one that oppressed me. Ibn Sirin, he said, I am not the one that prohibited for him that I may pardon him. It is Allah who prohibited for him, and I will never pardon what Allah has made impermissible. What do you guys think about that?
Even if I see.
Oh no, yeah. So even if you backbit either of these two major scholars, like that's it. Like game over. There's no hope.
I have to contradict him. He pardoned many and forgave many of the people that were part of sending him to prison.
So I mean, I'm saying, so even Imam Ahmad, right? Like he pardoned all of the people who abused him, the ones who like took advantage of him, the ones that imprisoned him. But that was less backbiting and more like torture. Yeah, for sure.
And they were even of a higher. They reached that level where they wanted to do it. They said, because they said that what it did to separating the Muslims during that time was a bigger thing. He said, I don't want this to separate the community, because he had followers who were angry that they had did these things to these imams, and they would retaliate.
Yeah.
So he said that, you know, I don't want to see anybody hurt. Retaliation.
So even Imam Ahmad, I think it was Mutawakkil, when he became the Khalifa, he released him. And not only did he release him, he gave him a stipend, he gave him a place to teach, like, you know, he supported him well. And one of Ahmad's students came to him and he said to him, he was like, you know, is this not better? And he said no. He said, I fear that this is there are more trials in this than there were when I was getting beat and flogged. Rahimahullah. Yeah.
When they slandered her, and Abu Bakr Siddiq wanted to respond, not giving.
To Misla. Yeah.
Example of Allah.
I mean, that's pardon, man. Like, no, subhanallah. So not only did he pardon him, he increased his stipend. I mean, you just have amazing examples of forgiveness from so many companions. Even the Prophet ﷺ himself. Yeah, he was known. My kind of yantaqim an nafsi. Like he never took revenge for himself. Like, you know, if you've ever abused or beat or backbitten or, you know, the plots against him, like to kill him. So it didn't faze him. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So what did the Prophet ﷺ mean by beg him for forgiveness if we cannot forgive what Allah has forbidden, right? That because this is basically what the scholars had mentioned. And he says here, what is intended for forgiveness if for an injustice, not make something impermissible permissible, right? That's not what the intention is, for sure. So the previous examples were any backbiting that was meant to, and it was meant to deter people from backbiting, right? It wasn't that they were, you know, petty and that they had no intention of forgiving anyone, because you find a many harsh statements from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam about certain sins, right? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the one who drinks alcohol, what? His prayer will not be accepted for 40 days, right? And again, like this is just it's meant to be a stern warning to the ummah to prevent and to deter people from drinking. So here the Prophet ﷺ said, why can't you be like Abu Damdam when he recites the following dua every morning? Allah, I have given my honor as a charity to the people. So what does he mean here? And what is the Prophet ﷺ talking about? Yeah. Like meaning that I have made my honor, like my honor is open to the people. If anybody who has backbitten me, like even before they said it, I've already forgiven them. So here he says, how did he give his honor in charity, right? Is honor something that you can actually give in charity? Right? This is a valid question here. And if he gave it in charity, is it now permissible to consume? Right? Because charity, you can consume charity, right? Somebody gives you charity, I can go buy some J's. You know what I mean? Like it's okay. I can get whatever I want because it is a gift that was received to me.
You know, when we in the Quran, it talks about the stained heart.
Sure.
And some of the people, how they talk about when a person repents, that Allah allows you to wipe off or re-shine your heart.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things they said was, it doesn't mean that it repaired what you did to it.
Yeah.
It means like an old car, you can shine that car, but the paint is already
damaged. Yeah.
So instead of taking care of it from the beginning, you know what I mean? It's not the same. If you damaged it and you wipe it off, it's
not the same as new.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
So if you damage it, so I can say, so is it lawful to consume?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it don't mean, you know what I mean? So if you eat poison,
yeah. It's
damage.
No, it's done its damage, and it's many. That is one of the ways that they talk about the heart, and that even the sins that affect it, yeah, they're removed, but it doesn't mean that the effect of the sin has been completely removed. So if it's not permissible, can this charity actually be accepted? And these are all questions that Ghazāli puts forward, you know, when he's talking about this hadith, because the idea is to give perspective and to make sure that we're understanding it the right way. And what is it that the Prophet ﷺ, what exactly is he encouraging here? You know, what exactly is it that he is encouraging? So there's some explanation that he mentions. He says he's not seeking retribution from that person on the day of judgment. And we had talked about forgiveness before, right? There are levels to forgiveness. That when I when I forgive someone or I pardon someone, what does that mean? What does that entail? And we had said that there are levels to it. The highest level being what?
You forgiven this world.
That I've forgiven that person in this world, and I've forgiven him in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we said after that,
you forgiven on the day of judgment.
But you still want your rights in this world. And the last one? Neither. Like you and we said that all three of these are these are an option, right? These are a choice. So if somebody stole money from me, like let's use that example. Like a guy stole $100 from me. Even backbiting, right? I can. So backbiting, he'd have to seek my pardon. Like me forgiving him would be forgiving him without him having to seek pardon from me. Is that okay?
And what if, like, if I backbite you, let's say,
yeah,
and you backbite me, do they cancel each other out? And then we try to see, like,
it depends on what you're saying about me. No, nothing cancels out. So what's going to happen in this situation? Or like what happens in this situation? Like we both apologize. Not just that. What on the day of judgment, we never saw each other's pardon. I was like, no, I'm going to say this about him, and he said what he did about me, and we'll meet in front of Allah. Then what happens? Right, Allah's just going to judge between the two, and it's not going to cancel. What's going to happen is He might take one of my good deeds, you take one of your good deeds, you know, and it'll be placed on ours. But will that good deed be enough now to bring me into paradise, or will my scale still be too light? So, and that means I have to count on somebody else backbiting me. Like, am I worthy of being backbitten so that I can backbite that person? Yes.
Not the thought I had, even with honor being charity, would that be still allowed or not? I would think it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Even if it was halal to backbite someone personally, it's a slippery slope. You may end up doing it.
Absolutely.
Someone else.
Yeah. For sure. Like,
habit.
so now if I get into the habit of backbiting one person, what is going to stop me from backbiting another? Right. This is not. It's more enabling than it is than helping. So again, the idea is not to make backbiting halal, right? So he's not making it halal for himself. He's just not holding those people accountable. Also, the injustice still stands. Why? Because it has yet to happen. It hasn't happened yet. And the most that is happening here is that it is a promise that he's making, that he will forgive someone. Like, is it necessary that he fulfills that promise? What if somebody backbit him so deeply, you know what I mean, or something that really hurt him? Right? He's just he's trying to make a promise to Allah that I will forgive. Oh, Allah, you know, basically give me the ability and give me the power to what? To forgive anybody who backbites me. But is it necessary that he will be able to fulfill that promise? No. Also, he firmly believes that he will forgive, but again, it's not necessary that he fulfills the promise that he's making. And it's similar to any other right that's taken, right? So I can promise that anybody who steals from me, for example, I will forgive them. But if they stole my favorite pen, you know what I mean? Like that really, it really struck me, and it really got me upset. Yeah. So even pain, right? So even the pain that I have in my heart, or whatever the case might be, that is a process, right? So remorse and pain, these are all processes that we have to deal with, and even with forgiveness, right? That's definitely part of the process. But learning how to separate the emotion from the event, it can become challenging, and you know, a lot of times they'll be very closely connected and closely knit. Forgive me for sitting down. I'm just like really tired. But so the punishment is still going to stand. The punishment still stands regardless, even if a person removes that, because there is accountability in all of these actions that we have and all these actions that we do. So even though that person might not hold him accountable, it is possible that like it's possible that he doesn't hold him accountable, but it's possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds that person accountable. And if punishments of this world are not lifted, then it is very possible that the punishment in the next is also not lifted for that individual, for that person. And forgiveness is always better. Forgiveness is always better. Unfortunately, we use it. I won't say it's a modern era thing, but I'll say, like, even historically, there is, like, spiritual abuse is a real thing. People really like using religion against others, especially if they're trying to get like a particular right. Or like even in the masjid, like when people try to do things for the masjid, it's like, oh, you know, brother, do it for the masjid, or sister, do it for the masjid, and expecting you to do things for free. And that's not fair. That's not how it should be. Yeah.
Spiritual blackmail.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what it is. It's spiritual blackmail. A service is a service, regardless if it's in the masjid or it's outside the masjid. It's like, oh, you know, do it for the sake of Allah. Okay, I should do everything for the sake of Allah, but you can't dictate my intention, right? Intention is my struggle, right? I have to work for it in whatever avenue and whatever it is that I'm doing in my life. You know, whether I'm being a taxi driver, I need to do it for Allah. Or if I'm a plumber, I need to do it for Allah. If I'm a lawyer or a doctor or an imam, I need to do it for Allah. For you to pigeonhole me into thinking that this is the only way for me to do it for Allah's sake, that's extremely problematic, because you don't dictate that. And just because I'm agreeing to your terms, doesn't mean that I'm going to like now the only choice is to do it for Allah. Right. It still might be riyā. Or I might because I'm feeling bad. Right. I'm not doing it because it's actually for Allah's sake. It's because I'm just so pressured. Right. There's right. It's like I'm so pressured that I just end up following and doing. Yes.
I was gonna say that there was, I don't remember her name, but that doesn't matter. It was like a Muslim psychologist.
Yeah.
She had her doctorate, and she was talking about an experience where she was talking to a woman, and she told the woman to like accept the abuse that her husband was giving her.
MashaAllah.
And I was so frustrated because I keep seeing people talking about these things and telling people to accept like abusive behavior.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating.
Be patient.
You can't really.
Yeah.
That's
No, you have to
just
be patient. Yeah,
You
MashaAllah.
know, it's okay.
Allahu Akbar.
It's your husband. You have to be forgiving. And I was
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
It's like
understand.
it's like I can't see out of my left eye anymore. It's okay. Allah will give you a better eye. It's like,
awful.
it's like I can't bring my arm up past this point. It's okay. You know, in India, you have 2 legs. You still have your health in 2 legs. You know, Allah will give you a better arm in Jannah. Yes.
There's so many who don't have it.
Yeah, it's like Allah. It's so bad. Yeah.
I mean, I generally I think in the concept of like money being a corrupting factor of intention.
Sure. And definitely it can be. Like nobody say that it isn't. The question is like, who are you to dictate whether it's going to corrupt me or not? Like, you know, like I can't dictate that for someone. Like this, the money from the masjid will corrupt you. Other money won't, but the money from the masjid will definitely corrupt you.
That's the very part.
It's so twisted.
Based on the hadith of when we can charge for teaching Quran.
Yeah.
If you can teach Quran and still it's good, it's the best money, like ensure to register to the masjid and still do good.
Yeah. No, because like the problem, there's some weak hadith about teaching the Quran and like, you know, it's like, yeah, it's like the worst. Like in the madhab, it's, oh God, stop. But it's you do have a lot of these twisted notions. You have a lot of these twisted notions. I remember I went to give a talk somewhere, and this guy was like, he's like, you know, I don't believe in paying khatibs, you know, to come and give khutbah. So I was like, yeah, I'll never give khutbah at your masjid, bro. And he was like, no, you know, you should be the first to blah, blah. I was like, nah, I shouldn't be anything. I was like, can you give the khutbah? He's like, no. I was like, so I'm providing a service that you can't fulfill, and you're saying I shouldn't be paid. I was like, you have a restaurant, right? And he was like, yeah. I was like, why don't you give your food fi sabilillah? Like, why are you making money off of it? What are you earning from? Shouldn't you be feeding the people? Shouldn't you, you know what I mean? Like, shouldn't you be forwarding them? And like, shouldn't you distribute, give sadaqah, ya akhi? Come on, you're not doing it for Allah's sake. I'm doubting your intention. And he was like, you know, he started getting overwhelmed. And I was like, see, it doesn't feel good, does it? Like, no. Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, it's just really twisted. I don't understand why that culture is there, why it exists, but don't be afraid to push back. Yeah.
I think it was just generally like people had the idea of because it used to be part of the
of the state. Yeah.
That they were covered.
Yeah.
So they had their stipend, they were taken care of because they believed that if the khatibs were corrupted, then the nation would be
corrupted. Yeah.
So they had to sustain them so that nobody could be swayed by anything. So if the state was paying them, you're like, okay, everybody's money's coming from the same place. So difference of opinion is actual difference of opinion versus difference of resources.
And not just that, before the pre-modern era, like before the Industrial Revolution, if I wanted to become rich and famous as a Muslim, what would I do? What would I study? I would study fiqh. I would try to become a judge. Right? The judges were very well off. They were very well paid. They were taken care of. And like, that was the field that people would go into to get money. And I mean, obviously that after the Industrial Revolution, that flipped and that changed. Now you have people who want to earn, where do they tend to go into STEM, right? It'll be science, technology, education, medicine. And that's where the money tends to be in terms of those who are providing services, not business, right? So business is there's always going to be more money in business. And now the worst paid group is, right, the teacher, like not just teachers, like teachers and the clergy, right? The clergy are just not well off. They're not taken care of in many different places. And it's a two-way relationship. So you will find that many, especially like for imams, it's like crabs in a barrel. You know, they'll just kind of be fighting for each other, like for this like minimal salary. Islamic school teachers also very minimal, like crabs in a barrel, fighting for that minimal salary. But if we increase the salary, what would happen?
More people would apply.
Right, more people would apply, and not, what kind of people would apply? Right, but more qualified. Right, you'd have more qualified people applying for those positions. And whether you like capitalism or you don't, it's an unfortunate reality. Like money will pay for the service that you're looking for. And the more you're willing to pay for something, in general, the better quality item that I'm going to receive, that I'm going to get. Yeah. Huh? No, that's what I'm saying. Most of the time, no, it's not an absolute. It's not an absolute, you know. Like, I mean, look at what Dara Hijra got, you know what I mean?
Speaking of this before, one of my friends asked even about Tuesday. I'm curious, what does he do in life? Like, he's an Imam here. Yeah, no, I'll tell you what, he's bread and butter. I'm like, he works here, gets a salary, it's a solid job. Oh, really? He was so shocked to hear that Imam can be a job. He is allowed to get more.
Yeah. And subhanAllah, like even so like the previous jobs that I had during the interview process, one of them actually said, they're like, you know, you're asking for like kind of a high salary. I was like, would you like me to start working and looking for other jobs while I'm working here and being the Imam here? I was like, I can do that, but how much time do you think I'm going to commit to the community? Yeah, no, I mean, forget the cost of living. Like my standard of living is higher than everyone else, right? I'm spoiled. Let's take that. The question is then, all right, do you want me to focus on the community, or do you want me to start looking for side jobs? Like how many places look for speakers? Like everybody's looking for khatib, everybody's looking for a class, everybody's looking for a speaker. Like people want to pay for somebody to come and speak, and it's not difficult. But do you want me to spend my time developing that network and trying to speak at all of these locations, or do you want me to focus on the community? And focus on the community. The more comfortable I am, like what was the idea of paying the qadi or paying the judge a lot of money? So he doesn't, so he's comfortable and he doesn't fall into bribes. Like it doesn't matter because somebody can come and bribe me. He's like, I'm good. I'm not losing this job for this one-time bribe. Right? That was part of the idea behind it. And this should be the idea of why we want to keep certain resources. But at the same time, if that resource is producing something quality, it makes sense. Like people are going to be like, man, he's getting paid a lot. And they're like, okay, yeah, but he's doing X, Y, Z. And you're like, okay, yeah, that's definitely worth it. Like then it makes sense, you know, to pay that much.
And it's relevant to the community, you know. I mean, because this is sort of, when I say a recent phenomenon, like within the last, see, I can go back more before some of them were born. Some masjids, there was no such thing as a salary for an imam.
Yeah.
But that was based on the population,
sure,
and all other things that's related to this, to whatever masjid it was. But in recent, say, as time developed and you have more expectation and the community has more needs, then you have to make an imam available for all the things that you mentioned. And the imams that used to work outside of the masjid to sustain themselves and their family, their availability was less.
Yep.
You can't expect an imam to work and sleep and then be available in all the times that we have in our diverse communities in this state.
Absolutely.
You see people, I'm sure, in the morning, at night, in the afternoon, Sunday, Saturday, holidays, you know, I mean, it doesn't stop.
Absolutely.
So how are you supposed to, or any service here, tech people or maintenance people, how are they supposed to attend to the masjid if they don't have a livelihood?
Yeah, one of the conversations we had was even having someone at the front desk. I remember one of the conversations we had, they're like, you know, we wish there was somebody at the front desk. I was like, well, there's a cost associated with that. Now the question is the cost worth it? You know, does it make sense? Can I have somebody 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at the front desk? Yeah, I can. I'll just have to pay someone to do that. Now, is that cost worth it for me in the institution? And how do I determine that? And I said, well, a viable alternative might be, you know, you have the person in person there who sits at the front desk, and you have a virtual assistant, right? Like you just have like a virtual screen. Somebody comes in and they have questions about things. They can just press and get whatever service it is that they're looking for. So one of the guys was like, well, you know, that kind of removes the personal interaction and this and that. I was like, yeah, I agree with you, but there's a cost, Akhi. It costs money. So my question to you is, how do I determine the value of that? When does it become worth it? I have to, well, isn't that kind of like, business like? I'm like, yeah, it is. I understand, but there's money. I said that there are limited resources that we have. If I had like an unlimited flow of money, it wouldn't be an issue at all. This place would be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like we would have like security scans for for everybody who walked in. Every person would have like an individual liaison when they came into what I mean, like a personal service, like getting your prayer area ready for you. Like I would do all that. I don't have unlimited funds, and if I have limited funds, the resources are going to be just as limited. How do we determine that? This has to be a reasonable conversation. And versus having a virtual assistant or virtual front desk, I said that's something that is more affordable, and I can justify more so the cost in that because it's a one-time cost. It's not a continuous cost that I have ongoing, and that is just going to supplement what we already have going on. It's not going to replace it. So, yeah, I do. I have a 6:30. I'm coming. So I guess this is probably these are the last two slides, inshallah, I'll share these. Hassan said that when the nations are brought in front of Allah, a call will be made to those who have a specific reward from Allah. The only ones to stand will be those who forgave in this world. And it's a beautiful narration. Again, the encouraging nature of forgiveness. Like, does this mean that in general they forgave, right? So if there's an individual you didn't forgive, it's okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Khudh al-afu." He said, take forgiveness. So the Prophet said to Jibreel, meaning what? He said, Allah orders you to forgive those that have oppressed you, tie bonds with those that sever it, and give to those that have denied you. Again, and this is very much in line with the character of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was said to Al-Hasan, so-and-so has backbit you. Al-Hasan sent the man a plate of fresh dates and said, it has reached me that you have given me some of your good deeds, so I intended to repay you. Please excuse me though, I cannot fully truly repay you. Like the deeds don't equal, like the dates don't equal the deeds that I have gotten from you. I don't know if this is like a little bit of a troll, but
Was this when Jibreel was saying the forgiveness, was this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling the Prophet specifically to forgive?
That's a good question.
Because
like, is it a command? Is it a command for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
So that he wouldn't have in his heart the things that other people have,
Yeah. Wallahu alam. That's a good question. I don't think it's far-fetched though.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's far-fetched. Yeah. I'll see all of you next week, inshallah. Wallahu alam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqi nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi.